And here comes Leslie's Among Us coming in.
Among Us, another Among Us. There's an Among Us Among Us. Multiple Among Us Among Us. I'm gonna stop saying that right now.
Come on, we're not in an Among Us video. Don't worry.
I mean, it's I can probably ride that out for longer, but for the sake of stream sanity, I probably shouldn't.
Are you trying to be sus right now?
I mean, I'm not the suspicious mushroom.
Come on, are you admitting to being the imposter?
I mean, I was always very good playing the imposter. The Among Us on Nehzzy's side going in for the protect, keeping itself around for one more turn, and into the correctly called freeze dry as well. Really unfortunate. And a Rage Fist going into the Iron Bundle as well. Doing a very sizable amount of damage to this Iron Bundle. Iron Bundle probably would have a hard time taking that on the best of days. And clearly not being able to sustain itself without a focus sash there on Leslie's side of the field, unfortunately, and taking just a very large amount of damage. With the sleep going off into the Annihilate, though, is going to disable some of the offensive pressure that we just saw. But wow, what a show.
What a show, and here comes the Iron Hands coming in. This will be Leslie's last Pokemon here. Probably the last chance of an offensive threat here for the Iron Hands. I don't know if Leslie's terrestrialized already, but if the terrestrialization is left for the Iron Hands here, this may not spell well for Lesley, unless that's a Sword Stance Iron Hands.
I mean, we've seen it before. We have seen it before. The team sheet for this one, let's see here.
We're gonna see Hedwig, the Iron Bundle, coming in for Nehzzy. It's gonna be the focus sash. There is a terrestrialization coming in for Lesley. I think this is gonna be the Iron Hands to grass.
Yep. We will see a grass type Iron Hands here. Still the most popular defensive choice, especially for the Spore and the Powder Protection. It's one of the best counters I've ever seen to Among Us, being able to terrestrialize into a grass type. We do see a Wild Charge coming out into the Iron Bundle, taking it all the way down to 1 HP and that Focus Sash. Still sticking around on the field, though, and it is taking that little bit of that recoil damage. And a Pollen Puff doubling into the Iron Bundle, taking it off the field rather summarily, seeing through that Focus Sash there. We have Primeape on this left on Nehzzy's side of the field. We now see the Among Us coming in as Nehzzy's last Pokemon choice here. Being able to offer that support to its partner, but at a severely compromised state.
Yeah, especially with Mousehold also probably setting up that Rage Fist a lot earlier, probably would explain why it knocked out the Iron Bundle in the first place. I wonder if Rage Fist is enough to knock out the Among Us here, if Leslie's Among Us goes for a Rage Powder here, because he's not going to get another Spore off anytime soon, unless Among Us survives.
Yeah, we do see Annihilate still continuing to sleep on Nehzzy's side of the field, and the Iron Charge going into the Hagrid for a critical hit, but not taking it off the field in a critical turn of survival, and the Pollen Puff going into the Among Us as well. Maybe expecting a Rage Powder use there, but a Pollen Puff on Leslie's side of the field going into the Iron Hands, taking it back up to full HP, resetting all of that recoil damage it's taken.
So far, Nehzzy's Annihilate's taking 2 turns of sleep. This will either be the 3rd turn, the unfortunate turn for sleep, or it'll be the wake-up turn for the Annihilate. Whatever happens here, Annihilate might or might not be in danger.
Might or might not be in danger is just sort of the name of the game, it seems. It's like you might survive this, or you'll die instantaneously. It's a really no in between.
No, it means here's the Wild Charge. No Rage Powder again. That's critical hits for the Wild Charge.
And another critical hit. Oh my goodness, the RNG giveth and the RNG taketh away, but it seems to be givething a lot in this particular case, taking that recoil damage and Pollen Puff going into nothing.
I am very surprised. Oh wait, never mind. I just realized Grass Terror doesn't work on Rage Powder. I just realized, I was like, why didn't he go for the Rage Powder? Oh wait, he's a Grass type. He can't do that.
Yeah, it's like a bullet metaphorically dodged. But pulling up the team sheets here, yeah, we do see that the Mousehold unfortunately was the first to go down. It does have these safety goggles on Nehzzy's side of the field, so it is able to kind of avoid any Rage Powder pullaways and set up that Annihilate with beat up and the Rage Fist. But it looks like it kind of did its part before we hopped into the match there. But it does have the safety goggles, so it's not going to be able to. It doesn't have a lot to worry about from Leslie's side of the field. And we do see also on Nehzzy's Amoonguss has the mental herb held item instead of leftovers being able to set up for taunt prevention. But really interesting to maybe see what kind of offensive corrections we can see here. Again, just the case of the Iron Bundle not being able to bundle very effectively, unfortunately.
No, and unfortunately, it did not reveal a focus size. So I can't look at the cheat sheets right now for some reason, but I will assume this Iron Bundle for Lesley is the booster energy, because other than that, I don't really see a. Oh wait, I just realized Lesley seems actually really bulky with that Grimstar on Corviknight core.
Yeah, that is a whole lot to have to potentially have worked through. That's the amount of offensive investment that you have to really set up at the beginning of the game to deal with something like that can be really tricky. I'd be interested to see if if that is a lead option that Lesley chooses here going into game 2.
Yeah, Lesley could lead the Arcanine and the Grimstar on getting an Intimidate off, get a screener off early, but instead we're going to see Iron Bundle Amoonguss.
Yes, we see. And we see the Mousehold, Annihilate lead on Nehzzy's side of the field, maybe setting up that Rage Fist once again. We all see just how effective it can be when it comes to dealing with things like frail threats like Iron Bundle.
Yeah, and this Iron Bundle for Lesley here, it does not have Icy Wind, so here comes a free beat up into the Annihilate here, gonna raise its boost power to around 200 to 250. Oh, there's a critical hit down the third hit. Not sure how much that will matter, but
critical beat up hit. Yeah.
And there's a bulk up, gonna immensely raise the power of Annihilate's Rage Fist, and even its defensive stats. Let's see if the Spore didn't go that way. The Spore did.
Spore did go that way. Going for the beat up instead of the follow me there, setting up for a sleep on the first turn, but the Annihilate restoring a little bit of its HP from its leftovers. It's got to almost put it all the way back to full HP, but I feel like we got a lot of spice, but there's really not much else there. There was a lot of offensive setup just to be put asleep, it feels like.
Here's something funny Lesley could do. The Iron Bundle does have Encore, and if it outspeeds the Mousehold, it could put Mousehold just to hit beat up on everything.
Yeah, I mean, that could be very, very interesting, assuming Annihilate stays asleep, but Lesley is pulling the Amoonguss back, it looks like, and replacing it with the Iron Hands for some offensive and fake out pressure, and knowing that it's got that grass terrestrialization, it's going to make it immune to any sort of powder moves that Nehzzy may choose to utilize here. But a Hydro Pump coming out of the Iron Bundle into the Mousehold. Mousehold takes it pretty sizably, only going down to about 40% of its HP. Still a little bit of a precarious situation, but Mousehold proving that it can still take a hit or two if it needs to.
Yes, Mousehold is surprisingly a lot bulkier than a lot of people would like to admit. And the thing here, this Iron Hands for Lesley has Fake Out, so he could Fake Out the Mousehold and go for the Hydro Pump, get some damage in on the Rage Fist, and even though that will raise Rage Fist power to 300, it may be a good trade-off you get damage early on the Annihilate.
That's very true, because, I mean, I think it would be a good call on Lesley's chance to capitalize on as many of these league turns as possible.
Oh, but it is tricky knowing...
We are going to see a Terra come out of this side of the field.
Terra goes from Mousehold, so whatever I said about the Fake Out may not matter anymore if it went for it.
We see a Ghost-type Mousehold. I was just talking about it. Ghost-type Mousehold, it's absolutely adorable to look at.
Oh, no, Fake Out came out!
Going out of the Fake Out, being able to pull any Fake Out and or fighting move pressure that we're going to see here, but the Freeze Dry going into the Mousehold is going to remove it from the field. Still leaving that Annihilate in a position to potentially now take anything coming out of the Iron Hands if it chose to go for a non-fighting type move.
Oh no, 2 turns of sleep now for the Annihilate. Let's see what the Iron Hands did here. It does go for a Wild Charge, but it is a +1 defense thanks to the bulk up.
Yeah, the bulk up defense proving to be very, very helpful there, as in mitigating a lot of what could have been potentially a 50% HP situation. We do see now the Amoonguss coming out on Nehzzy's side of the field. We know that the Iron Hands has nothing to worry about when it comes to having to things like Spore or Rage Powder. And so being able to mitigate some of that and then maybe focus on Annihilate could put them in a really really good position.
Yes, and here comes the Iron. Oh, Iron is actually going to switch out here. Maybe is anticipating Annihilate waking up here. It's just going to go for the Amoonguss.
We see the Amoonguss coming back out on its side of the field, and Iron Bundle going for a protect. A really defensive pivot on Leslie's side of the field here. Rage Powder going off for Nehzzy and pulling a whole lot of nothing away from it.
Oh,
The Annihilate continuing to sleep. That is now the third turn of sleep, or is that 4?
you can Nehzzy can rest easy. That was the last turn of sleep Annihilate could possibly take, because the maximum amount of turns of sleep you could ever have in this generation is 3 turns of sleep. So no matter what, Annihilate is going to wake up this turn.
And just in time, it seems like.
But if Nestle knows about this, does Lesley Spore to Annihilate again?
If that is the play if that's the play that gets read, that's going to be a wow, just an absolute wild choice of events. If that knowledge is known, we do see Nehzzy going for the protect on its own Amoonguss. And the freeze dry going into the Annihilate, maybe predicting the freeze dry going into the Amoonguss there, but instead we see the Annihilate wake up, pull out the Rage Fist right into the Amoonguss, enough to one-shot it. That Rage Fist is very strong right now. It's gonna be able to really start to even things up here if left alone.
The Iron Hands in the back. Iron Bundle can still threaten a lot of things. I mean, we still must have freeze right. It's still a respectable amount of damage. Oh, Corviknight's the last one.
We see Corviknight coming out on Leslie's side of the field in the back. A really solid defensive choice. This Corviknight featuring safety goggles as well, so we are not going to see. It's not going to be subject to any Rage Powder or Spore, and it has the Mirror Armor ability as well. With a wonderful, very solid, bulky combination of Roost and Bulk Up. This Corviknight is a wall.
I mean, is it good enough of a wall to break through a max power Rage Fist at +1?
I'm very interested in seeing if that is what's going to happen here. The Iron Bundle going into protect on Leslie's side of the field, trying to stick around as long as it can. And the Rage Powder coming off.
Probably wanted to redirect whatever Iron Bundle tried to do.
Yep.
And here comes the Rage Fist into the Corviknight.
Rage Fist going into the Corviknight. How much does it do? It does absolutely enough. One shot taking it off the field. Corviknight is an insanely defensive Pokemon by comparison, and still just instantly wiped from the field. What a show. That just going to show, if you give the time and you are allowed to set up that Rage Fist damage increase, wow, what an insane show of power. We do see Lesley replacing it with the Iron Hands. We do have a potential for Fake Out Pressure, but it's not going to affect the Annihilate since it has not terastallized.
I mean, Fake Out could still work on the Amoonguss, but I think Leslie's way out of this game is unfortunately going to be a critical hit from a Hydro Pump. You know, that's the only way I can see Lesley potentially come back from this game, but otherwise, this game's wrapped up for Nehzzy.
Fake Out going into the Amoonguss, and the Hydro Pump not only not critical hitting, but missing entirely, and the Rage Fist going right back into that Iron Bundle slot, returning fire and taking it off the field as well. That is 3 one-shot KOs from Annihilate for anyone paying attention at home. It's Amoonguss taking the flinch from the Fake Out, but Amoonguss has kind of done what Amoonguss needed to do here.
Yep, and this set is going to yet another Game 3. Interesting to see that Lesley went a little bit more of a defensive pivot with that Corviknight, but again, by the time that all of that got set up, Nehzzy was set up perfectly, and maybe it was a fortunate thing that Annihilate took all 3 turns of sleep there with that Spore.
Taking the full 3 turns of sleep and still being pretty healthy on the other side of it is I think exactly the setup that Nehzzy needed. Just showing, because once it woke up and started rage fisting things because it got that one bulk up in, once it woke up and started rage fisting things, there was nothing left. There was absolutely nothing left. It didn't need to terastallize. It was just cleaning up the field. I'm interested in seeing if maybe We see the same lead from Nehzzy's side of the field. I mean, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. But also what corrections we might see from Lesley's side of the field, now knowing just how insanely good of a sweeper that Annihilate is capable of being.
Yeah, I'm looking at Nehzzy's side of the field here. Looks like Mousehole and Island will be the lead again, but I'm more interested to see if Lesley full on commits to the Grimmsnarl game plan here, because we haven't seen that yet, and you probably do misreflect against that +1 max power Rage Fist.
I mean, setting up a Reflect in front of a Rage Fist could be a very, very helpful defensive correction. I agree. Also, maybe bringing the Arcanine out here for a Will-O-Wisp burn debuff. That may be helpful here as well. But we know that we do know that the Annihilate does have that fire type terrestrialization, so you'd have to time that very, very quickly and very, very carefully to maybe avoid that immunity that you would pick up from that. What does Lesley do here? Go for a more defensive setup, or try to prioritize as much offense into the Annihilate as possible?
It looks like it's going to be an Iron Hands Iron Bundle lead, so immediately comes out with that fake out pressure, and here is the Quark Drive from the boost outage for Iron Bundle to instantly multiply speed by 1.5.
Yeah, giving it the very, very impressive speed boost to it. It's already really, really rapid.
Natural already seeing a play from Nehzzy. He's anticipating the fake out for the Ghost Terra, but does the Iron Hands go for the fake out this time? Because the first opportunity that Iron Hands had to fake out the Mousehole, it didn't happen.
It did not. It did not choose to operate or to opt for the fake out going into the Mousehole on that respective turn. Not really being able to utilize that pivot as much as is desired there. But we do see the choice being made and Mousehole being terrestrialized into the Ghost type. Hopefully trying to pull any follow me fake outs and or fighting type moves into itself, now rendering them useless. The only move fake out, it went for it and it didn't work. But we do see the Hydro Pump going into the Mousehole as well, proving that very, very effective follow me, and then didn't even choose to follow me. They just double targeted into the Mousehole. Beat up going into the Annihilate, giving it that Rage Fist setup that just showed just how effective it was on the last game. Will Annihilate be able to clean up just as effectively? We're about to find out. The first Rage Fist going into the Iron Bundle, setting up a very, very similar series of events potentially that we saw in the last game.
Deleted instantly, and luckily this time the beat up didn't get a critical hit on the Annihilate, but Lesley this time going for the fake out onto the Mousehole, and rightfully Nehzzy called that out perfectly.
It was a really great call, and I'm really surprised that it was able to execute through that way, considering he didn't offer that in game 2. So I figured maybe going into this game that maybe an alternative option would have been chosen as well. Instead, it went for the more easily read call. Maybe just trying to kind of outbrain Nehzzy's terrestrialization choice there, and maybe just overthought the execution there.
Yeah, and now this Amoonguss is kind of doing nothing here, because Spore will likely get followed mead here and redirected towards that that Mousehole, but it's holding a safety goggle, so it's not going to really do much with the Spore, so it's probably left pollen puffing.
And it's just going to continue to draw attention to itself with that follow me, and then the Rage Fist coming out of the Annihilate almost immediately after into the Iron Hands. Not quite enough to take out it in one shot without that bulk up boost that we saw in the last game, but still a very, very large amount of damage. And Mousehole finally going down after doing a very, very good job of keeping an Annihilate in this game and set up for offensive pressure.
Do we see a pollen puff? We see
the Spore going into the Annihilate now that Mousehole is off the field. It is the only target left and instantly falling asleep. Will we see the 3 turns of sleep that we did in the previous game? Who knows, but we saw that it was able to truck it out last time, and with the Amoonguss support still potentially in Nehzzy's back pocket, we might be able to see it again.
Yeah, and now here's an interesting question. Like, we know this Annihilate's going to take his first turn of sleep no matter what here, so it's going to be left doing nothing. But another thing, this Iron Hands has taken a lot of damage from that Rage Fist and then the recoil from that Wild Charge knocking out that Mousehole. Whose Amoonguss is faster? Because if Lesley's Amoonguss is faster, can get the heal off with that Pollen Puff, that's huge. But if Nehzzy's is faster, Pollen Puff could take a knockout.
It is the fungal showdown of the evening, I guess, here with the speed tier Amoonguss fight. Because no one ever really does any speed investment into the Amoonguss. That's not really a really popular option, but it's always really interesting to see if someone maybe used those 4 points there. We do see the grass terrestrialization going into the Iron Hands, removing any potential effectiveness from a Spore or a Rage Powder. It's going to hit what it wants to hit, and especially with a Sleepy Annihilate on Nehzzy's side of the field, that's looking like probably a pretty prime target. The Drain Punch going into the Amoonguss, not a whole lot of damage, but recovering maybe just enough HP to survive whatever it needs to stay on the field. But not with a Pollen Puff going into it, taking it off the field. That grass terrestrialization, both its biggest savior against Amoonguss and one of its biggest weaknesses against it as well when you're carrying that Pollen Puff.
But here's the thing. I don't fault Lesley for going for terrestrialization, even though this Pollen Puff will fail. I don't fault Lesley for that play because probably a Spore was probably more realistic there, but I guess also another thing, you didn't know if Nehzzy's Amoonguss was faster than yours.
True, like without knowing the Amoonguss speed tier there, and honestly, we may have just seen the shift of a speed tie, but that the Pollen Puff doubling into the Iron Hands was, I think, exactly the right call to make there. The Corviknight showing up, still being very, very defensively effective, potentially, with the Annihilate still asleep, going for the bulk up, maybe definitely increasing both its attack and defense. We do know that it has both Iron Head and Brave Bird, so it's not a body press build that we have here, but it also, this Corviknight's capable of staying on the field for a long time between its ability and the fact that it is carrying Roost.
Very important here. The Mouthhold already terrestrialized for Nehzzy, so the Annihilate is pretty much in danger of that Brave Bird right now from the Corviknight at +1, and it's already taking 2 turns to sleep, so unless Annihilate wakes up here,
it wakes up, speaking into existence again. Rage Fist going into the Corviknight. Will it be enough to take it out without that bulk up boost? It will not, unfortunately.
Oh, he's
the Corviknight going for the second bulk up in an attempt to just maximize as much damage as possible. That may have been a very, very critical play. The Pollen Puff going into the Annihilate on Nehzzy's side of the field, not affecting it.
Oh, good call out. Good call out there with the Spore from Lesley. Probably anticipating a wake up, but even if it didn't wake up, he was probably sporing the next turn anyway.
Yeah, I mean, is it a good call? Is it a genius call? Is it somewhere in the middle? Probably that third one, but absolute picture perfect timing on being able to put that Annihilate back to sleep, especially knowing just how much damage it's capable of doing after you've already boosted your defense on a Corviknight, and it's still capable of doing that much. That's could be potentially unsettling.
And here's the Roost.
Corviknight going for the Roost.
I was about to ask if Brave Bird were to knock out the Annihilate pair, would it have knocked itself out with recoil based on that HP range, but taking it slow there and anticipating the Annihilate to switch there.
Anticipating a switch and proving it, unfortunately didn't quite make that call. Pollen Puff going into the Corviknight doing just literal chip damage at this point, but trying as best as it can to be as useful as it can, knowing that it's the counter Amoonguss isn't going to be affected by a lot of its toolkit.
Does it now wake up this turn? No, it does not.
It does not. It continues to take a sleep. This is a sleepy boy. And the continued bulk up going into the Corviknight, just absolutely making it potentially a huge obstacle to have to deal with. The Pollen Puff from Nehzzy's Amoonguss going into Lesley's. Doing a very small amount of damage, but you know, every little bit helps, especially when you're 1v1ing a pretty tanky Pokemon.
And Lesley's Amoonguss is still going for Spore onto the Annihilate slot. I think Lesley's Amoonguss is dead set to make sure this Annihilate never threatens this Corviknight immediately when it wakes up, because if you ever get this Annihilate with any wake-up room, it could take a walk to a mile.
Exactly. I think continuously putting that Spore pressure on the Annihilate is the smartest thing to do for Lesley, and it's still asleep. That is and Corviknight getting another Roost health bonus back. So we have now, I believe, a 2 or 3 bulk up Corviknight back to full HP, very, very easily with the and really kind of shifting the snowballing offensive lead here. While Nehzzy was able to really seize control of that in the previous game with Rage Fist.
There's a Rage Powder. He knows that the Annihilate is going to wake up this turn.
Rage power. Oh, and he's gonna pull that away from the Corviknight, keeping Corviknight's offensive viability still there, leaving it untouched. It does knock out the Amoonguss. We do still have all of that Rage Fist damage boost going on here. And Corviknight taking the Brave Bird, though, into the Annihilate is enough to take it out with all of those bulk up boosts, doing a just nuts amount of damage, showing just how effective it can be to capitalize on those sleep turns with those bulk ups that it used. Pollen Puff going into Corviknight as well, doing a whole lot of pretty much nothing. But we see the Flutter Mane coming out on Nehzzy's side of the field.
Depending on how this Flutter Mane's trained, I don't know if this Corviknight can pull out this 2v1, but I've seen crazier things happen.
I have too. I've been speaking to Corviknight's bulk and its offensive viability, but it's almost entirely physical. So
here's a Shadow Ball.
We see the Shadow Ball coming out of the Flutter Mane here.
Good crit!
But not enough to take it off the field. And an Iron Head going into the Flutter Mane and instantly dispatching it. A 3 attack boost Iron Head. It was unfortunately absolutely everything it needed to be to take out the Flutter Mane. Unfortunately,
not doing enough damage. I think Lesley's gonna win this game with another roost into a Brave Bird.
Unless we see this an absolutely miraculous show of force out of an Amoonguss, and I'm gonna watch to see if it happens. This is a very, very difficult fight for this adorable little mushroom with the 4 times we can.
Lesley's gonna win under the breaths of despair. Comes back. I did not think that would happen out of that Corviknight, but all of those spores, all of those pollen puffs came through that Corviknight, and Lesley wins 2-1.
Absolutely. The sleepiest Annihilate I think I've ever seen. This very, very aggressive spore pressure there really helped set up the snowballing advantage that Lesley needed to take that match. That game 3 really came down to who could continue to snowball in the way they needed to snowball, and who could just get the hit timing where they needed to. And when your offensive pressure in the form of Annihilate was constantly being kept asleep, it really put, I feel, Nehzzy in a position where they just started to fall behind a little bit more and a little bit more until they reached that sweet point where it was just enough, and that Brave Bird really wrote the end of the story.
Yes, and also, I was thinking about that Flutter Mane because it had the booster energy, but it unfortunately revealed a speed multiplier, which led me to think if that Shadow Ball did get that critical hit, would it be enough to knock out the Corviknight? Turns out it did get that critical hit, but even that wasn't enough.
Yeah, the Corviknight surviving a critical hit Shadow Ball from a Flutter Mane was honestly not something I expected to see. But going for the booster energy speed over the special attack may have been all the difference between that being a one-hit knockout or not. That is a lot of damage calculation that I just not capable of forming off the top of my head. But if that, I feel like that was going to be the biggest maybe difference maker there, and it just got it's the risky run with both Flutter Mane and Iron Bundle. Do I make it the faster one, or do I make it the stronger one? And it looks like in this case it just didn't work out in Nehzzy's favor.
No, and we're heading into the tail end of the Swiss rounds here, and Lesley could be on track to top cut this tournament.
It's very exciting. Yeah, we're definitely getting to the point now where we're starting to see a clear establishment of who's going to be making it into the top cut going into rounds 5 and 6. But what is the nuttiest play we think we've seen so far in these 2 rounds?
I still think it's that critical hit Shadow Ball survival from the Corviknight. You know, he just literally a snowball from that Amoonguss because it was just left sporing the Annihilate, because if that Annihilate ever got a chance to do a free turn, maybe get 2 free turns, Lesley would have never won that game.
Yeah, I would, if I were playing this match from Lesley's position, I can't say I would have executed any of it any differently. I mean, just like between building up what I could and keeping what I had in reserves where I had it, and helping to neutralize as much offensive pressure, I think it did everything perfectly. I mean, Spore Spam might evoke certain reactions from certain VGC players, but if it works, it works, and it definitely did what it needed to do in this match.
Also, more
But
importantly, we got to see an Amoonguss battle tour. Is Iron Hands gonna get healed first, or will be knocked out first?
yeah, the Amoonguss showdown, absolutely nutty. Well, that wraps it up for round 5. We will be going into round 6 here in just a moment. This will be my last commentary for the evening.
Same with me.
I had an amazing time. Supernova, thank you so much for joining us. I had a great time casting with you. I'm Savage Patch Kid. I will catch you all when I catch you.
See you guys later.